This is our first webinar for the year 2023, and we are glad to have you. My name is Martin Agoje, the National President of ISSUP Nigeria chapter. This year, we are definitely starting on a very important topic, which is substance use prevention interventions in schools, alternatives to punishment. So to lead us in this discussion is Maria Mfon Ilugbuhi, and to moderate this session with me is Ejikeme Bishop Oguji. So I say welcome to both of you. Ejikeme is the Assistant General Secretary of ISSUP Nigeria chapter and a member of the editorial team. Before we introduce the speaker for today, let me once again remind participants that information from this session and every of our webinar does not constitute medical or treatment advice. The views are those of the speaker and not necessarily those of ISSUP. So I just want to be sure that at least that is well understood. So at this point, let me call on Ejikeme to introduce the speaker to us. Ejikeme, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Our presenter today is Maria Mfon Ilugbuhi. Maria Mfon Ilugbuhi is a substance use prevention professional and the CEO of the Shelter Youth and Community Network, a capacity building and research organization. She holds a master's degree in guidance and counseling from the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Maria is a former federal law enforcement officer who served in the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, for 21 years before her voluntary retirement. While in the NDLEA, she served in both the enforcement and drug demand reduction units. Presently, Ilugbuhi is a learning facilitator, substance abuse counselor, global trainer for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, and a master trainer for the Colombo Plan Drug Advisory Program. She has been involved in the pioneering and implementing of many evidence-based training and initiatives in Africa, Asia, and Europe. She recently won an award for her excellent contributions to the implementation of the UNODC's response to drugs and related organized crime in Nigeria initiative. This initiative is an EU-funded project where she engaged with major stakeholders and key populations in law enforcement and drug demand reduction. She is a member of the Counseling Association of Nigeria, CASN, International Society of Substance Use Prevention and Treatment Professionals, ISSUP, and other professional bodies. We are glad to have you today, Maria. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Bishop Ejikeme. Good afternoon to you. Thank you, Dr. Martins. Good afternoon. It's good to have to be in this meeting today. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone joining us on this call around the globe. So today we want to look at substance use prevention in schools, and we want to look at alternatives to punishment. What should happen when there is an infraction on the substance use policies? So for our learning outcomes, we hope that at the end of this seminar, you will be acquainted with the components of a comprehensive school-based substance use prevention intervention, learn about the importance of substance use prevention policies. You should also know how to implement or learn about how we implement prevention interventions in the school setting, and then of course, how to address infractions of substance use policies with positive sanctions, and that is where alternatives to punishment comes in. So before we go ahead, we want to look at a document that tells us what works and what does not work. We are talking about the International Standards on Drug Use Prevention. We have the latest edition or the second edition here with us. And what's this document about? It tells us, as far as the school setting is concerned, the initiatives, the programs, the policies that work, that have been found to be based on evidence, those policies, those interventions that have been found to have positive outcomes. Other than that, it tells us in details the available evidences, the levels of efficacy in the different settings. It also talks about the developmental ages, which we will see later on as we continue. Other than that, this document has benefited from the contributions of so many people, so many experts from all around the world. So it's not just a regional document, it's a global document. And I'm happy to say that I know 2 Nigerians who have contributed immensely to these documents. I know Professor Isidore Obot of the University of Uyo, who is also the head of CRISA, and I also know our very own ISSUP president, ISSUP Nigerian chapter president, Dr. Martins, who has also contributed to this body of work. So these international standards also tells us what an effective national substance use prevention or treatment system should look like. So before we go ahead, let's look at the risk factors for drug use. This will help us to understand what those things are that increases a young person's chance of using substances. Most times we have said that, oh, the reason why young people are using substances is because they don't know. They don't know the consequences. They don't know the components of these substances. They don't know the consequences. That is valid. But other than that, there are other things that puts young people at the risk of substance use. So we talk about personality traits, mental health disorders, family neglect and abuse. We talk about poor attachment to the school and community, as well as growing up in marginalized or deprived communities. So when we talk about personality traits, we're talking about people who are born natural sensation seekers, people who are aggressive, impulsive. You know, some children are born with very difficult temperaments, so these can increase their chances of using substances. It's not cast in stone, yes, but this is what research has shown. Another thing is mental health disorders, and now this works in 2 ways. Some children, because of the mental health issues they have, they do not know, they cannot come to they do not have that capacity to know that, oh, I'm not supposed to be involved in this. On the other hand, there are also children who have mental health issues who say, oh, I hear voices, oh, I see things, and they take substances to calm them down. That's what they say. When I take these substances, I don't hear these voices anymore. Of course, they are supposed to actually seek treatment or seek the help of a mental health specialist. Another risk factor for drug use is family neglect and abuse. When parents are not really involved in their child rearing, when the child rearing is harsh, when parenting is very harsh and abusive, and when they come from environments where there's a lot of chaos, or where they live in homes where their parents or their guardians are actually using substances. Another thing is poor attachment to the school and the community. Some children do not have access to early childhood education. Some don't even have access to education. Some children don't even also like to be in school. Yes, and then another thing is that sometimes in some schools, the environment is very harsh. The climate in the school is very harsh. The teacher is harsh. The friends probably bully and things like that. So though these factors put them at risk for drug use. Another factor is growing up in marginalized and deprived communities. Not everyone who grows up in a marginalized or deprived community will use substances. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that this could be a risk factor. So you have communities that have been abandoned, no social inclusion, no amenities. Children wake up and all they see is poverty, despondency. You know, they see their youths probably just drinking alcohol, smoking all kinds of things. And they might tend to feel that this is what life is all about. And then in those kind of communities, you see that mostly ghettos, you know, a lot of things that go on there. And one of those things, apart from drug use being common, you see that children run around unsupervised. Now, when children run around unsupervised, they become a prey to many things and to many people using them for whatever they would want to. Now, when we look at these risk factors, all of these risk factors are outside the control of the child. But when we find a child using substances, most times we don't think about these risk factors. We just say, oh, this must be a bad child. You must be a bad child to be using substances. So we need to know that these risk factors are those things that could predispose a child to using substances, and these risk factors must be looked into. No child chooses the kind of personality trait he or she wants to be born with. No child chooses the kind of family to be born into. No child chooses to have abusive parents. No child chooses the kind of family to get into. No child chooses the kind of community to get into. So these are things we must hold in mind. So since we are talking about prevention, it's just normal to see what prevention is. So prevention has a primary objective, and that is to help people, especially young people, to avoid completely the use of substances or to delay the initiation of these substances, or if they've started already, to avoid developing disorders such as dependence. Now that's on the one hand. The bigger picture is that we want the healthy and safe development of children and young people so that they'll be able to realize their potentials, maximize these potentials, and become contributing members to the society and to the community. So it's not just about saying, don't take drugs, don't do drugs. We're looking at the big picture so that these people can actually give back instead of becoming nuisances. So when we talk about evidence-based prevention, it's much more than, because we're talking about the school now, it's much more than going to school to talk to young people about the dangers of drugs, which is okay, or to tell them the consequences and all of that. It goes beyond that. Any prevention intervention that is evidence-based must definitely make provision to address those risk factors that contribute to drug use. So prevention must address personality traits, it must address mental health disorders, it must address family situations, it must also address issues in the community, poverty, issues of poverty, issues of lack, issues of deprived communities. Those have to be addressed in prevention. So let's look at the adolescent's brain. Remember we said prevention is big, especially for young people. Why did we say that? Because the brain has a lot to do when it comes to substance use and dependence. Now, early psychoactive substance use increases a young person's chances of more or serious substance use and possibly addiction. And that is because the part of the brain that is affected is that part that is very important for cognitive functions. We're talking about the prefrontal cortex that is responsible for how we see situations, how we make sense of things, helps us to control our impulses, help us to control our emotions. So early use of psychoactive substances can affect brain development in those areas that are critical for memory, for learning, for motivation, for impulse control, for behavior, for judgment. So that's why it is important that young people do not have access to psychoactive substances until they are matured. So research has shown that maturity of the prefrontal cortex takes even up to 25 years. Let's look at this picture. This picture shows brain development, stages in brain development over 15 years. These have been compressed into just 5 images. So you see the brain at age 5, at age 8, 12, 16, and 20. Definitely these pictures don't look the same. You see that some are more colorful than others. Some are brighter than others. So the brighter the color, the less the maturity. So the more mature side of the more mature brain is dark, is blue in color. And you see how the maturity goes from 5 to 8, 12, 16, and 20. And research says that even at 20 is not fully developed. So prevention program is really, really sensitive to children, is really concerned about children, because introducing these substances before they are mature or before the brain matures is really going to affect them in a negative way. So let's get back to the international standards. The international standards tells us about developmental ages, target population, and settings. So for the developmental ages, we have infancy and early childhood, middle childhood, early adolescence, and adulthood. For the target population, we have the universal, selective, and indicated. And there are various interventions that work for these populations. And then for the setting, we have the family, the school, the community, the workplace, and even the health sector. This is based on evidence. It's based on systematic decision-making processes, provision of services, which have been shown over time to have evidence. It's not based on we did not arrive at this based on gut feeling or tradition or following patterns that have already been in place. No, it was as a result of rigorous scientific research the world over. So this is a summary of what we have in that document. By the way, that document is on Google. Just type the international standards or the standards, and then the latest edition will pop up. So this is what we have as a summary of that whole document. Initially, we talked about the settings. These are the settings: family, school, community, workplace, and health sector. And of course, the different interventions that work in these settings. So for instance, in the family at the prenatal and infancy stage, you have prenatal and infancy visitation as an intervention. And then we also have interventions for pregnant women with substance use disorders. For middle childhood and early adolescence, research has shown that equipping parents with parenting skills really work. So we also have in the school, in early childhood education is very important. It has shown to delay the use of marijuana before the age of 18. It has also shown that this intervention has helped in building children's cognitive, social, and emotional skills. Then in the middle childhood, you have personal and social skills, classroom management. This is for the teachers to manage the classroom in a positive way. Then you have policies to keep children in school. And then in early adolescence and adolescence, you have personal and social skills and social influences education, addressing individual vulnerabilities, and then school policies and culture, which is where we really want to hang our presentation today on. So since we're talking about the school, I don't want to go into all these other settings and the different interventions. What I'd like to also explain is these different boxes in different colors. Remember, we talked about the settings. We talked about the populations, the universal, the selective, and the indicated. Now, the universal population consists of everyone, both those who are using substances and those who are not using substances. But in the universal population, you always have majority of people who are students who are not using substances. So that is the green box that you see here. Those interventions in the green box work for those in that population. Then there is also the box that is orange in color. So this is for the selective population. These are children whom, or the population that we found, we have determined that they could be at risk For instance, those growing up in marginalized communities, those living with parents who are using substances, those with mental health issues, those who have experienced one form of abuse or the other, sexual, emotional, and otherwise. So that is that for that population. Then you have the red box, the red box. So this population is known as the indicated population. These are people or students who have started using substances but have not yet developed this, substance use disorders or dependence. Yes. And then you also have the stars. If you notice, all these interventions are rated. So this rating is not cast in iron. Yes, yes, but it helps us to have an idea of the efficacy of this intervention. So 1 star means limited, 2 stars means adequate, 3 stars means good, 4 stars means very good, and 5 stars means excellent. So these are how these interventions are categorized. Now, let's focus now mostly on the school. I had already told us about the different interventions for the different age categorizations. This is from the 2015 edition, but the latest edition has addressing mental health disorders among the interventions that work for children who have been seen using substances. So today, we are going to be looking at school policies and culture. This is where we are hinging our presentation today on. Of course, we'll touch on all these other ones, but then what we are really going to talk about is going to be embedded in school policies and culture. So these are the interventions that I explained earlier. They are clearly written out here for your understanding. So what are the components of a comprehensive school-based substance use prevention intervention? So you have the school policy, the school climate, and the prevention curriculum. These 3 work together to give a comprehensive school-based substance use prevention positive outcomes. So when we talk about the policy is what guides all these other interventions. It shows what the behaviors are expected in the school. It shows what consequences for infractions should be, and then policies also ensure that these other 2 interventions are also embedded, and then everyone is on board, all stakeholders are involved. Then when we talk about the school climate, we're talking about the temperature of a school. So we talk about the quality and the character of a school, which helps children to feel socially, emotionally, safe, which helps them to feel connected and supported. So when the climate is okay, children feel that, I can connect with my teachers, I can connect with the school staff, I can connect with the school authority, I can make good grades, and I feel secure. And this helps, a positive school climate not only helps with academic performance, but it also helps in reducing the tendency to use substances or be involved in other risky behaviors. And then we have the prevention curriculum. So the prevention curriculum is a structured curriculum that teaches personal and social skills. It also helps children to decide not to use substances. It teaches refusal skills, self-control, emotional awareness, communication, problem solving, and a whole lot. So these are not strange. The prevention curriculum is not strange to us here in Nigeria. Presently, the Unplugged program, which is an example. Of course, we have the Unplugged, we have the Bodvin life skills, we have the PTND, Project Towards No Drugs, and others. But here in Nigeria, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes, through their drug demand reduction unit, have widely implemented the Unplugged program, and it has been reviewed and is now running in all federal secondary schools. I think secondary school is like high school, yes. And then also some state governments have started buying into the project. So you have states like KB and Bayelsa already, who have already trained their teachers and they've started implementing this. All right, let's look at the traditional approaches to substance use infractions. I'm sure some of us may have come across this, maybe even used some of these. Okay, so when there are infractions, of substance use, there are normally different approaches to handling the situation. So you could hear something like mandated substance use testing, shaming, arrest, beating, and cuffing, punishment such as suspension and expulsion. Zero tolerance. We have a policy of zero tolerance, or we are starting a zero tolerance approach, to substance, then random drug testing, or even inviting law enforcement officers to arrest those who have been involved. So what has research shown? Research has shown that when we use these negative approaches to infractions, nothing changes. And in some cases, there is an increase in substance use. There is a research that says that where there was constant suspension and expulsion of students, there was an increase of 60% substance use in the school population. So there is absolutely no evidence that drug testing deters substance use or users. So we've talked about discipline, we talked about punishment as one of those traditional methods we've been using, and then we are looking towards what we can do other than punishment, or not letting punishment be the first.
Sorry, Maria, we can't hear you.
Okay, where did you stop hearing me? So I'll go over it again, please.
Okay, no, this slide is fine, discipline versus punishment, so you can continue from there.
Okay, so I just got a notification on my screen that my audio had an issue. Thank you so much. All right, so we are saying that when there are infractions, we shouldn't be silent. We shouldn't turn the other way, but we are saying that these infractions should be corrected in a positive way. And so we are saying that discipline is preferable to punishment. So what's discipline? Discipline is about the behavior error that has occurred. It's about teaching to be well behaved and how to make a better choice next time. Discipline teaches new skills, that is how to manage the behavior. Discipline teaches how to solve problems and deal with uncomfortable situations. When we also implement discipline, we are able to teach socially appropriate ways of dealing with emotions, and then we're also able to teach self-control. Discipline also provides opportunity for active learning from mistakes or errors. Now, when it comes to punishment, punishment is really about the child or the person who has, committed the behavior error. It's about making that person to pay or to suffer for the mistakes of breaking the rules. And in the process, nothing may even be learned. This child might just keep having these feelings of anger, resentment, or feeling unloved in the process. It's about controlling the child rather than showing the child what he did wrong and what he can do in case of another circumstance where this kind of thing occurred. So punishment sometimes focuses on the past behavior, begins to recall what was done in the past, and offers little or nothing to help the child behave better in future. So strategies that are successful are strategies that should reduce offending behaviors and include a balance of consequences and incentives with a supportive school climate. So you can call it the carrot and stick approach. All right, so let's go to the alternatives to punishment. So I did say when we started that everything, begins with policy. The foundation is policy. Why are we talking about evidence-based school policies? Why are they important? They're important because they are the first step in a comprehensive prevention approach to schools. Policies that are based in evidence have shown to reduce or even eliminate the availability of and access to tobacco, alcohol, and other drugs. They ensure consistency in response to behavior so that we don't take different decisions at different times depending on who is involved. And then there's evidence of effectiveness in reducing the amount of behavior in the school setting. The policies create room for participation of all stakeholders, including the students. And then they support other evidence-based prevention interventions with policy implementation. However, policies have to be enforced before they can make impacts. So what are the alternatives? Now, instead of punishments, let's have policies, school policies and culture that are wholesome. What are the content of policies? Policies clearly specify what substances we are targeting, where the substances, where we are targeting the substances. Is it in the school or among the students alone? Are the staff exempted? Are the vendors exempted? Or are there occasions where substances can be used, alcohol, tobacco? Could those ones be used, you know, at occasions, graduations, and all that will be spelled out in the policy. And also, policies help to reduce or eliminate the availability and access to tobacco and alcohol, like I had said. And then policies address infractions with positive sanctions by providing counseling, or where there is no trained substance abuse counselor, that child can be referred to counseling or treatment or other healthcare and psychological services rather than punishment. And then policies are done in such a way that they apply to everyone in school, to the students, to the staff, to the teachers, to the visitors, you know, and then it includes all psychoactive substances, as at least the ones you know presently. Yes, because these things keep changing and new ones keep coming up. And so they must be enforced consistently and promptly, including positive reinforcement for policy compliance. So if it's not just about those who have you know, committed infractions, yes, those who have not, you know, should also be encouraged. And then evidence-based policies support normal school functioning, not disruption. So whatever discipline a child is to be given, or what, yes, it shouldn't be such that the child is out of school. Yes, and it also supports positive school ethos and commitment to school and students' participation. The structure is that all stakeholders must participate in the development of substance use related policies. So it's not something that the administration or the governing board sits down to write, you know, and draft. No, the people who are going to be beneficiaries of this policy need to have their input. And remember, policies must be implemented with other prevention interventions like the positive school and classroom climate, as well as the prevention curriculum. Now, these are things that have been linked to known negative outcomes: punishing infractions of substance use, policies with suspension and expulsion, and random drug testing. Those have not been linked to any positive outcomes. So another thing that we can do is to address mental health disorders. Mental health issues is something that people really want to talk about because of stigma and shame. That's I mean, in our society today. What we have to know is that adults who have, well, for some adults who have mental health issues, some of these issues started in childhood and even adolescence. So whether in childhood or adolescence, there should be, we should have some modalities in place to support children and adolescents who have these issues. Their parents too should be involved in addressing these issues, because a stitch in time saves 9. And we need to address mental health disorders in children, emotional disorders, behavioral disorders, conduct disorders. All these need to be addressed. Suspending or expelling a child will not address these issues. But in the school system, we can put modalities in place to address these issues, because children who have mental health disorders have a high risk of using substances. And of course, like I said earlier, no child chooses to have a mental health problem. The WHO has recommended behavioral interventions for children and adolescents who have these issues. And so another thing can be done is psychological interventions for both the children and the adolescents, as well as those who are taking care of them. These ones need to be trained, you know, skills training for them is very important. And then also involving the parents before these interventions are carried out, informing them, you know, getting them to be part of the process, you know, so that they can give all the support that they need and all the understanding that they need. And sometimes too, there might be need for pharmacological interventions, but this can only happen in specialized settings for people who are trained, to do this. So this is an area we need to look into when we see children using substances. Another thing is addressing individual psychological vulnerabilities. Earlier when we started, we talked about risk factors for drug use, and we did say that one of them was personality traits. So this makes some children vulnerable. These are issues that we should address, because some children do not know how to positively cope with emotions. When they have this flood of emotions and emotional issues, some of them tend to use drugs to, cushion it, instead of, going to the appropriate setting or place for intervention. But if in the school this is noticed, then help can definitely come for these children. So the structure is that the personality trait is addressed, and then the child is helped in dealing constructively with emotions arising from these personalities, instead of using negative coping strategies like using alcohol or drugs. And it's really touching to me to say this, because what we see portrayed in the media these days is, even in the home videos we watch that our children watch, you see anytime someone has an emotional problem, the next thing is alcohol. So we need to teach them that that's not a positive way of coping with any stressful emotional issues. It must be delivered by people who are trained. So brief interventions is also one of the alternatives that we can use for children who have started using substances. Remember those in the indicated population, those in the red box, yes. So brief intervention involves screening and then actually carrying out intervention or referring to treatment if it's necessary, or referring to those who are experts in brief intervention. So brief intervention basically addresses the relationship of substance use and goals of the individual. So child is asked to compare, okay, what would you want to be in the next 5 years? Oh, I want to be a doctor. Okay, I want to be a lawyer. I want to be a teacher. I want to be a pastor. So this drug use, how is that in line with your goals? So those are some of the things that are done. Is one-on-one counseling, structured, and for the very brief ones, they can last to 5 to 15 minutes. Others could last longer, for 40 minutes to 1 hour, depending on the components. Sometimes you might need to do some motivational enhancements, and then also maybe cognitive behavioral therapy and all other psychosocial interventions. So this might also take time, but then it's a very effective way of helping those who have initiated substance use who have not yet developed disorders. So brief interventions originally was meant to be delivered in the primary healthcare system, emergency rooms and all of that. But we have found out that counselors in schools who are trained with, on brief interventions are doing a very good job. So school counselors can actually implement brief interventions when trained. So the other alternatives are the positive sanctions. So from problem-solving contracts to other restorative practices. So I'll just go through them briefly. Problem or solving contracts assist students to identify alternative behavior choices, help them to develop a contract. So instead of just the first thing being suspension or expulsion, give them an opportunity, to walk through the contracts and play their own part. Of course, if they refuse, then we can think of other forms of correction. Then restitution gives the child an opportunity to repair what he has done wrong, probably in the course of substance use, maybe have destroyed something or done something that was uncomely, gives that child an opportunity to do that. And of course, the child can also be asked to pick up trash or wash windows or even the restroom, whatever it is that will not disrupt the school functioning. And then we have many courses of skills modules. This will teach social skills that are related to the behavioral error. Brainstorming with parents is also important. Parents are brought in We look at some of those risk factors. Is this child from a substance using home? Is it from a chaotic family? Is the child being abused at home, neglected, or anything like that? So this helps. Then, of course, counseling to deal with the behavioral problems. So we have support groups, basically those who have gone through this part and have something to offer to those who are on this part. So this is very different from taking people who have had an experience of substance use to talk to those who have never had an experience of substance use. This is different. These are people who have also had this experience, and then they can share and help those who are in that, having that same experience, how to come out of it. So we have community service. Children are mandated to do something in the community as a form, of discipline. Of course, unless they don't want to do it, then that's when we'll apply other measures. Then the mediation program helps them to resolve conflicts in a non-violent way, and then they are given an opportunity to practice. So chill out location time allows the child to go somewhere, sit down, think about what he has done, discuss, the violation with the school member of staff, and right his wrongs. And then restorative practices offer the opportunity for the offender to be accountable to those they have harmed through building relationships and increasing their social skills. So all these are things that can help a child, to get back on track instead of being sent out of school, or the child eventually becoming a dropout, or eventually, getting into street gangs and doing many untoward things. These approaches have been found to have a positive impact on substance use among all students as well as staff. So now the implementation is very important, because a policy will just be a policy if it's sitting on the shelf. It has to be enforced. However, it must be enforced with a human face. So people need to be trained. Yes, they need to be trained. The enforcers need to be trained. They need to be told why the policies are in place. They also need to educate everyone. They have to be fair. They have to be consistent. They have to be firm. And then they also have to know that the policy is not cast in stone. So if there is a need for adjustments, that can be done with the collaboration of all the stakeholders. So other evidence-based strategies for drug prevention include having a positive school climate, having a student-teacher relationship that is positive and warm, giving students clear procedures, coupled with teacher enforcement of school procedures, a coherent school education mission, a relationship between the principal and staff that is cordial, and then social emotional learning and other restorative practices. So I would like to end with this quote by two former Secretary Generals of the United Nations. Kofi Annan of blessed memory said, "I believe drugs have destroyed many people, but wrong government policies have destroyed many more." What was Kofi Annan talking about? Kofi Annan was saying, I know that drugs really do harm people negatively, but government policies that do not give a chance to young people who probably are in the experimentation stage of substance use to make amends and be reintegrated into the school system or to the society can destroy these lives much more than the one wrap or the one tablet that they were caught with. Because in the instance where those who use substances are incarcerated, sent to jail, they missed a lot of life opportunities. Ban Ki-moon, on the other hand, says, we consider alternatives to criminalization and incarceration we must consider, sorry, I beg your pardon, we must consider alternatives to criminalization and incarceration of people who use drugs. And I am solidly behind him. Yes, we must consider alternatives. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Maria, for that excellent presentation. I want to believe that participants have immensely benefited from your wealth of knowledge. We really appreciate that presentation. So while we await more questions, if you have not sent your questions yet, please use the chat box to send your questions. But before that, let me quickly, as a way of summarizing some key points, even though it's difficult to summarize all the key points, especially that your presentation is well loaded. The speaker talks about the international standard on drug use prevention. And that is a document I want to believe that every person in the field of drug demand reduction, generally, whether prevention or treatment, should have. She has also at least made us to understand that you can get that on the website. Just Google international standards on drug use prevention, you will get it. And I have also shared it on the ISSUP Nigeria chapter platform for those who are members of ISSUP Nigeria chapter, so you can get it from there. And if you need it, if you're not able to access it through Google, just get in touch with any member of ISSUP. You'll be able to get it. And thank you, Maria, for acknowledging me as one of the expert contributors to that document. I really appreciate that. So the speaker has also made us, thank you. The speaker has made us to have a better understanding of what substance use prevention entails. Also talks about the brain development, from infancy to the age of 25, and how substance use affects the brain. Then also talks about the appropriate interventions for different settings and population. Then, of course, talks about the component of a comprehensive school-based substance use prevention, talking about the school climate, the school policy, of course, as the first school policy, school climate, and prevention curriculum. So before we take the first question, let me also say that the speaker talks about the difference between discipline and punishment. Very important, very important. Even though some persons may want to use these two terms interchangeably, but the speaker has made us to understand that there are differences, especially when it comes to substance use prevention. So straight away, so that we don't take too much time on this, Ejikeme, please take up the first question that we have there.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Martins, and thank you, Maria, for this insightful presentation. I have a couple of questions here, and the first one is coming from Austin Nyamfo, all the way from Liberia. His question goes, I would like to know to what extent infraction or punishment of substance users leads to an increase of substance use. Like in my country, Liberia, substance users are arrested and punished. So his question is, does punishment lead to increase in substance use? And to what extent does that happen?
Okay, thank you, Austin from Liberia. So basically, in today's seminar, we're really concentrating on the school system, yes, before we now talk about generally. So for in the school, the report that I quoted from, the research that was carried out showed that where there was constant suspension and expulsion of students for substance use, it led to about 60% increase in substance use in that school. So I like to share an experience. Remember, in prevention, we don't use one experience, but I just want to share an experience, yes. So I was in Uganda some time ago, and we're having this course, was there to teach the school tract. And when we taught on this particular topic, someone who had an experience volunteered to share. He said that in his class 4, secondary class 4, he was expelled from school for drinking, for taking alcohol. Yes, he was caught taking alcohol and he was expelled. And that day that he was expelled, all his friends gathered and drank to stupor. And I was curious. I said, why did they drink that much? And he said they were drinking in solidarity and to protest his expulsion. So there is no evidence, except we see another research that proves otherwise. Those who have carried out research said that it does not reduce suspension or expulsion, does not reduce substance use. Instead, it increases substance use. Then generally about people who use drugs, in Nigeria, is no longer criminal to use drugs. Yes, people are encouraged to go into treatment, but no one is arresting anyone again just because of substance use. There is general knowledge now that is an illness, and so needs health interventions, medical interventions. Dr. Martin, I don't know if you want to add something to that, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I think
you have responded so well. So until research or evidence proves otherwise, we'll rely on what present evidence has shown. Thank you.
Okay. We have a question from Esther. Is it possible to get the presentation slides? Yes, the presentation slides will be available on ISSUP website. You can go to www.issup.net. If you go there, you are going to get the presentation. And also another question from Esther too. Say, how can I join ISSUP Nigeria chapter? I've been a member from Kenya, but I've relocated to Nigeria now. I'm a psychologist. Please, I think Dr. Martins will respond to the question, how Esther can join ISSUP Nigeria. Over to you, sir.
Yes, Esther, please feel free to reach out to us. Just find out of any member of ISSUP Nigeria chapter, and request to reach out to the ISSUP office. They will direct you accordingly. I would have said, my number is actually available. I don't want to take much time. So if you want to take it down, you can take it down. Okay, I will use, I'm not sure how you, okay, 080 2326 5398. Take it again, 080 2326 5398. And if you are sending message outside Nigeria, please remember to add the code +234. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Another question from Jumoke Badamosi. There is this fear that learners with drug-related issues in school, if not expelled, may influence other innocent students. How do schools handle this challenge?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Jumoke. This is what we get all the time. This is what we get all the time. Actually, that is not true. You need to know that in every population, you will have people who are resolute non-substance users. You will have people who will never use substances no matter what. And then you also have other people who they are not using substances. They may be at risk of using substances if certain conditions, certain conditions affect them, like the risk factors we talked about. And then you also have those who have started using substances. Now, we cannot say because one person is sick or one person is ill, therefore we must drive everybody or throw the person away. If we understand that this thing has risk factors, has causes, if we understand that, and we have people who are trained to manage it, who are trained to also help these people to get well, why do we need to expel them? Why do we need to suspend them? Why? The damage in suspending a child or expelling a child is much more than giving that child counseling, is much more than addressing the benefits in addressing that child's individual vulnerability. Is greater than the expulsion, is greater than the suspension. Addressing that child's mental health issue, addressing that child's family background. You see, we will keep thinking like this when we believe that children who use substances are bad people, are bad children, are sinners. This is what will happen. Yes. If we think that those who have diabetes are sinners, those who have hypertension are evil people, then we will not want to help them. So we are not saying turn the other eye. And that's why we have given a litany of alternatives, of other ways. Let's even give them a chance to make it right. And you've seen in those presentations that I said, if after giving them all these chances, they still say, no, we don't want to change, or we don't want to take this lifeline, then we can try other things. So the first reaction to a substance use issue should not be expulsion or suspension. And we have teachers, counselors in Nigeria who have, told us how this method has worked. I think 2 years ago, we had a presentation for counselors in one of the education districts in Lagos, and they were sharing their experiences of how the principal would bring a student, this one must go, this one must be expelled, and they call the child, start interacting with the child, counsel the child, and they are back doing better than even those who are not taking substances. So why are we afraid to help our young people? Why is our first reaction to throw them out?
Okay.
It's not contagious. It's not contagious. It's a learned behavior. The child learned it somewhere, and the best thing that can happen is to help that child to unlearn that behavior with all the support that we can give. Dr.
Wow.
Martin.
Yeah, thank you so much, Maria. I think one of the points you made there summed it up. Suspension or expelling the child should not be the very first option in addressing substance use among students, even among children. In some cases, it's discovered that some parents may just want to throw the child out, lock him out and things like that. So suspension or expulsion should not be the first line of action. Because if you ask me, when they are suspended or expelled, where are they expelled to? Where are they suspended to? It's a different thing when you are referring the child to a treatment facilities, especially when disorders have been established and so on, or counseling facilities, So just throwing the child out of the school without alternatives constitutes even more harm to the child. So what we are saying from the presentation is that we should know where to draw the line when every other thing seems to have failed, right? And the child or the student continue to constitute threats to the school and to students, not necessarily by maybe first attempt of maybe using substance that ordinarily sum up to having constituted threat already that would have led to expulsion. So we should know where to draw the line, and not something that the school should just unilaterally do without at least seeking the support of experts who can manage the situation, and even better for the child, for other students, and even the school itself. Some of these things have been practiced in different parts of the world, and even in Nigeria, I can tell you it works better because that stigma of substance issues or drug use issues, and making every person who uses substance to already be somebody insane and things like that, makes it look like the harm they are constituting already is so much to bear. So better understanding will help in managing this in such a way that we don't complicate fragile situations. Thank you. I know we are almost out of time. Let's see how many few questions we can take. I want to believe that ISSUP will bear with us to spend maybe the next 5 minutes or so before we wrap up. If you can take the next question.
Okay. Is it possible? This one is coming from Etido Aniefiok Mbre. Is it possible to misinterpret discipline as punishment, especially if the person involved is using drugs?
Is it possible to do what, please?
To misinterpret discipline as punishment, especially when the person involved is suffering from SUD, substance use disorder.
So for someone that is actually suffering from substance use disorders, which I don't think we have them in the majority in the school, because when you actually talk of substance use disorders, there are a lot of things that come into play. Yeah. It's such that the drugs, the substances are taking over that person's life that he cares nothing even about school. I'm not even sure such a child will be in school in the first place, because the substance is all that's taking over that child, and he's more interested in using substances than being in school. Actually, if it is just a substance use infraction, or it's just the person is just a user, or in any, the way the matter is approached will actually, let that child know that this is for my good. So if a child is caught using substance, and the first thing is to give the child what we call a dirty slap, or a slap that resets the brain. How do you think that child will think that that is discipline? The first thing is to have a conversation. And most people don't know. Why do I say so? I have engaged some teachers late last year, and one of the principals walked up to me and said, "Thank you so much." He said, "There is a child that I had pinned down to suspend this week. I never knew you could have a conversation with a child and you caught using substances. I'm going to have that conversation with that child, and I'm not going to suspend that child." So we are talking of, when we use those traditional methods, there is no way a child will not think that it is punishment, because it's actually punishment. What does slapping the child, how does slapping him put skills in him, imbibe him with skills to refuse substances? How does it resolve the problem he has with his personality? How does it resolve the issues at home? How does it resolve his mental health issues? So we must, of necessity, think about the risk factors before we apply any kind of intervention. Thank you.
It's all right. Thank you so much. How fast we could take these ones? A couple of questions more. This came from Lydia Ajayi, and the question goes, please, what is the review on the unplugged program in schools? A federal government school in Lagos, Nigeria recently made news when the students leaked out and lodged in a hotel for sexual exploit under the influence of alcohol and psychoactive substances.
Active substances.
This was confirmed by the principal of the school. So what needs to be done in the school now?
Okay, so for me, I don't really jump into that bandwagon that says that everything that happens is because of substance use. Like, I also hear people give very bogus statistics. Over 70% of crimes committed are under the influence of drugs. So we go to the prisons and we get statistics from the prisons, and it's not so. We have like 2%, 3%. So, but this is very popular and very, very good to listen to. So there are people who have an intention to do something. So they have an intention, for instance, have an intention to be involved in sexual escapades. And so to enhance that, they take drugs. But when the situation is analyzed, when once they come, oh, there was alcohol there, oh, there was probably cannabis, oh, there was this, it must be drugs. There are so many people who have committed crimes, heinous crimes, who neither drink nor smoke nor take any substance. So everything cannot be solved in the school. And like I also say, let's look into the home as well. What happened? Each of those students, if you talk to them, they are going through a lot, a whole lot. So I wouldn't want to attribute that to the failure of the unplugged program. No. Because if you even want to look at it, how many of the 104 or most federal government schools in Nigeria, how many are involved in this? So this is my humble submission.
It's all right. I think we can just take a couple more questions.
Okay.
This one coming from Ronke Grace Awopetu. And our question goes, testing periodically can be a way of drug reduction in schools. This is because the students will be aware that they will be tested periodically. Can you share more light on this, please?
So when we talk about drug testing in school, so there are some in some scenarios where students want to go for sports. I mean, it's compulsory. If you need to be involved in this competition, everyone in that group, that sporting group, needs to do a test. It's either you are tested before, you're tested after to find out if you have enhanced yourself to go at a certain speed. That's understandable. But when you talk of periodic testing, so periodic, drug tests from time to time. Oh, let's go and test. Let's go and test. So what is the guarantee that I will not abstain from substance use at that time of the test? Yes. Yeah. So it's coercive. It's coercive. It brings lack of respect to the students, and it erodes trust in the students' school relationship. It hinders communication, which would have been an opportunity to help. So what happens after the test? What is the essence of the test? Is the test so that we can get a counselor to help them, or the test is so that after that they will be expelled? Are they better off expelled or better off in counseling to continue their studies? So these are the things that we should look into. Testing is expensive, and the onus of the test, the validity of the test actually depends on the laboratory. How are we sure that the laboratory is up to standard or will do that? And in schools where these things go on, I tell you an experience someone told me briefly. He said he was in a panel where they were doing a drug testing, and everyone that tested positive got a doctor's report. And the school spent so much money, and the exercise was a futile one. So they will get a doctor's, oh, yes, okay, he has had this pain. That's why he was on tramadol. Oh, he has done this, he has done that. So
okay, let me just...
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, let me just read out the questions so that you can just attend to them all at once.
Oh, thank you, that would be good.
This one asked from...
Sorry, GPM, it looks like that is the much we can take. Not on our side.
Thank you so much.
I know when it comes to the issue of prevention, it is usually very interesting. And that is why we also want to encourage participants here who possibly have not received training in a different curricula or different curricula of prevention. I don't want to start mentioning any of them now, so that it won't look like one is advertising a particular curriculum or so. But let's reach out and see how we can participate in some of these trainings. It will indeed be very helpful. The issue of drug testing could be controversial, but the truth about it is that let us look at what evidence says. That is very important. And at times, when we talk of some of these things, we forget that even the school environment is what is constituting the risk for substance use for the children. And the children are suffering under environment that possibly is not conducive for learning. So many things constituting risk for substance use. It could even be the teachers that are using these substances. It could even be teachers that are sending them to use to buy substances for them. It could even just be the way the teachers and the school management are addressing their issues that are complicating, their mental health and so on, and resorting to substance use. And when you talk of substance use in the school setting, drug testing and so on, who tests the teachers? Because the teachers are role models. You want to test the students. Who tests the teachers? So there are so many issues around it that if we want to continue with that, it will take a very long time. But again, for those who have participated in different trainings, let's see what evidence is, and want to encourage people to carry out studies to see how effective some of these settings where they have conducted where they do drug testing, random or anyhow it is, or whatever way, it is being carried out, to see how effective it is. Then we can learn from that model. But until that is done, let us see, how we can address some of these issues so that we keep improving in our drug control efforts, so that we don't draw a battle line between we, the adults, and the young ones. And it could be very dangerous because they want to test the test limits. You're telling them that they are not good enough. You give them names and things like that, but how do we reverse that to see that we carry them along in whatever we are doing? And before I wrap up, let me also say that there is a message on, that's a question or request that we share the materials. We are taking your email address and that will be shared with you. So on this note, once again, let me say thank you everyone for being part of this wonderful session. The speaker, Maria, thank you so much for proving to be the global expert in this industry that you are. And you have not disappointed us, and I know participants are happy with your presentation, and we are glad that you could make out time to be part of this session and for all of us to benefit from your wealth of experience. So, Ejikeme, so thank you for co-moderating this session with me today, and for always being there to at least support what we are doing. And to my colleagues from the ISSUP Global, I say thank you for your support. I know Maria is itching to say something, but that's something we got the more of wave. I can see that. And to say thank you. Thank you. I know Maria will really. So to all the participants, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to another session in March. So to everyone across the globe, thank you for believing in us. And Maria, again, use this opportunity to say thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Thank you, Olivia, behind the scenes. And thank you, Ejikeme. Thank you for having me. I am very grateful. And I want to conclude by saying that even when it comes to suspension, the child should still be monitored to ensure that that child is receiving treatment. We should not just suspend and forget about the child. Yes. All right. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm back for now.